Hey YouTubers, this is this is Turboman UK here. Welcome. I just thought I'd do another live stream. This one's going to be based around the Super Nintendo Classic and the other controllers that you can use. So what I've got right here is I've got the standard Super Nintendo controller that comes with a Super Nintendo Classic, and that's plugged in already. That's going to be the primary controller, I guess, for most people. Next of all, we've got the Nintendo NES Classic controller. Obviously that's going to plug into the kind of Nintendo Classic there as well, but with this particular one I've replaced the shell. So instead of using the cheap and nasty shell that I would have got from the third party, I've actually put an original original NES controller shell on this, just so it looks and feels a bit more authentic and the buttons feel great. Next up, we have a Wii Pro controller. This Wii Pro controller I would have been using for quite a while now. It's excellent really for things where you need dual analog sticks and some triggers. It's also got a home button on, which means the down and select that you'd use, you don't normally have to. You can just hit home and go to the home menu. Finally, we've got something that, oh, and of course this plugs in, if I just find the other end of it. This will plug in to the Super Nintendo Classic as standard. Finally, on the left hand side here, I've got an arcade stick. Now this arcade stick is a USB arcade stick, and it's the Mayflash Arcade Fight Stick F300. As it's USB, it doesn't plug in to the front of the Super Nintendo Classic. It's going to be plugged in to the USB on the go adapter. So obviously that's going to be the connector there, and it's going to be plugged in to one of those USB on the go sockets over here, and then we'll configure it using Retroarch. So let's start off with where we are on the PC. Now in the past I've had several problems with Hakchi and my USB on my Surface Pro. And the main reason, I think, was because the USB kept disconnecting for no good reason. If you've been suffering from this, I'd like to offer a solution from it, and I'll do that right now. So you should open up an Explorer window, a Windows Explorer window, and you're going to want to go to Device Manager. So right click on this PC and say Properties. Next up, take a look at the Device Manager, and that will load up. And if your USB has been disconnecting for no good reason, just expand out the, again this is with Windows 10 I should say, obviously it's quite clear there on the right hand side I'm using Windows 10. But this should work for similar Windows installations as well. So take a look through the Universal Serial Bus controllers and right click on them and go to Properties and take a look at that power management and make sure the checkbox isn't ticked to allow the computer to turn off the device to save power. Go through each and individual one. I mean, you know, PCs these days use a lot less power than they used to, and you know, for the sake of not corrupting your USB stick that you're going to be using in your Super Nintendo Classic, ensure that all of these actually have, some of them don't have the power management, but if they do have the power management, like the generic USB hubs, make sure that they are not turning off the device. If they turn off the device, then you're going to have problems with Hakchi. You'll maybe even corrupt your memory card or your USB drive, and that's not good, and then you have to restart everything all over again. So here we've got Hakchi, and I'm looking right now at the Super Nintendo USA Europe firmware that I have on there. So I've got lots of different consoles on there. I've got PlayStation, got Game Boy Advance, I've got all kinds of things on here. So let's take a look at the Super Nintendo setup right now. So to do that, I'm just going to recenter and boot. Oh, let's take out the USB, of course, and let's insert that into the on-the-go adapter. So I'm going to put it in the Apologies. I'm going to put it in the on-the-go adapter there, so you can see it's down. And what we've got installed here is just the on-the-go adapter and the Super Nintendo, which I'm powering on now. So there's my custom boot screen. And of course, I'm currently in the NES Classic firmware. So instead of using this pad, I guess I could just take it out and put it to one side. And I'm going to plug in the NES Classic controller. As I've already said, this is one that I ordered from Amazon. It's got an extra long cable, which is really, really good. It just goes on and on and on. You can also buy controller extensions. But the nice thing about using an NES Classic pad in here is that it just feels tons better. So there we go. So now when I'm playing Balloon Fight or Bubble Bobble, it's all controlled via this. So this is one of the other options you have. You don't have to use the SNES controller. You can go on Amazon and order some of the NES Classic ones. So, and these, they feel much better. If you've ever played on an NES, you'll know that you've got kind of some kind of muscle memory. And although the Super Nintendo controller is much better than the NES one, it's just nice to play on the original when you can. Got me. Not this time. So obviously that feels much better than a Super Nintendo controller. So my advice would be just spend a few dollars, a few pounds, and order the controller that will work for it. As usual with the Hakchi installation, to reset or go back to the main menu, you can either push reset on your Super Nintendo or you can press down and select, and that takes you back to the menu. So obviously I've got access to all of the original games here, which is fantastic. Now if you're playing with the original games and you're playing with the original emulator, you have to use the classic controllers that plug into the front. So I'm going to show you the front again of this. So you'll be using these controllers when you want to use the standard emulator. So if you're using the NES Classic or the Super Nintendo Classic, you know, the Nintendo emulation, then you're going to have to use these two. I don't think you have a choice. But if you want to use Retroarch, and you're familiar with Retroarch running on the Super Nintendo, if you're not, have a look at my channel. There's ways to add those modifications. But if you want to use other controllers other than the ones that plug in here, you're going to have to use Retroarch to launch them. Let's go back now and let's go and take a look at my standard Super Nintendo Classic firmware. So I'm just going to put the Super Nintendo pad back in. I'll put this to one side. In fact, let's use this one instead, because we've seen the Super Nintendo pad plugged in. I will just grab this. There we go. And I'm going to plug this in. There we go. Now, of course, the advantage of this particular pad is that it's got a home button. So instead of pressing down and select, you can hit home to get out. So let's go and take a look at some of the games. I'm going to look at my Super Nintendo collection. So the way I've configured this is I've got all of the Super Nintendo games running using the stock Nintendo emulator. So either down and select, or with these pads, you can hit home and it goes in there. Also, these pads are excellent for PlayStation, which I'm going to show you now. So I'm going to hit home. I'll come out of this and I'll go and show you the PlayStation running on the Super Nintendo. Again, this pad really is ideal. If you can pick one of these up, it's going to be great. And I'm just going to load Ridge Racer here. Now, Ridge Racer can't, of course, use the Super Nintendo emulator that's built by Nintendo. It uses Retroarch, and to access Retroarch, you simply press select and start. And then you can get in there and change settings, come away from full screen, make it 4:3, change the aspect ratio. There's so many different options you've got in here, but one of the things you can do is you can change the controller settings, which is quite useful. And you can do that in the input menu, and then you can change the binds for user 1. And decide that you might want to change over the square and the cross or whatever, but all of that can be done from this particular Retroarch menu. But I'm just going to quickly show you the fact that everything works really well in here. I prefer using digital. It's quite smooth, I think you'd agree. It really handles it very well. Not doing too bad yet. See if we can take the big corner. Making this look easy. It's one of those games this that if you know how to drift, it can be incredibly easy. If you don't know how to drift, it can be painful. Playing on the beginner level here, so it's not really essential to drift around every corner. And you can most of the time get away with just slowing down or 1 or 2 crashes. Or you can drift sideways, but you do lose a lot of speed there. I'm just going to move up into second, I think, as I go around this corner. So again, this isn't using anything other than Retroarch and the PCSX core. Taking that with ease, and I'll just cross the line and finish. Okay, so just taking a look at the core here. If you're ever in any doubt about Retroarch, it does tell you what core you're using in the bottom left of the screen. So this says it's a PCSX rearmed core on 1.71 of Retroarch. Okay, so one of the things that you could do, I guess, is you could play this using a different pad. Once you're using Retroarch, you can plug in USB pads. So I am just going to see what I can do. This may go horribly wrong for us, but it's always worth a go, isn't it? Okay, so this particular pad is set to PS3D input. It has various settings because it's compatible with multiple systems. Just going to plug it in. There we go. So this would be the same for any USB pad. I'm going to go down to input, and then I'm going to look at, let's see, user 1 binds. Now it's asking me Here we go, device index, Clovercon. So I've pushed right, and once I've pushed right, this controller is no longer working. I can't push left and return. But on the arcade stick, I can push left and return. As you can hear the clicking there from the micro switches. The arcade stick's obviously working right now. So this is in the menu, left and right. While we're in here, we'll come down and we'll just see what we can do. Obviously the cross, I think that's come out. We want to go back in. No, we don't want to do that. Where am I now? I don't know. Okay. I've never used this particular version of Retroarch before with this, so let's see if we can come out or get back somehow. So I want to go into here. So I'm going to press, the X or the square. It looks like it's a square. Come down. And I want to get these mapped in. So I'm going to go for the cross now, which is that one. The square is that one. Select is that one. Try it again. Cross, square, select. Nope, I didn't do it. Must remember to hit the right key. It's incredibly tedious to do this. Select is that one. Start is that one. Up, down, left, right. Then the circle is that. Triangle is that. That should be enough for now. I'm just going to come back out of this. If possible, coming back. Nope. That's the X. Okay. And I'll press start and select and get back to the game. So now I'm using the USB stick with Ridge Racer. So the same goes really for any pad. And it's working quite good actually. I'm quite surprised. I will hold it up and show you. If possible, it's quite heavy, but so you could do this with any core. All you've got to do is patience and go through it and map all the controls. I think it looks quite good, works quite well. So just think about this, you could do it with any USB device that supports a PC. So as long as it works on a PC and it's been made for a PC, or you know that it can work on a PC, it should work on this. Let's just hit start and select there and come back to Retroarch. So that's it, just a quick video here, just lasting under 20 minutes on how you could plug in a USB controller. I've used this one and a USB on-the-go adapter to play PlayStation games or even to play, I'm guessing, games from, let me hit down and select and see if it works. Maybe that's just exited, I don't know. So down and select comes out, yep. Let's see if this works with Neo Geo games. Just as a little bonus at the end. So I'm going to try Neo Geo. I've got cores that work. I'll go into one of these. Yeah, Metal Gear Slug, that will do. Nope, that particular ROM isn't working. Let's try this one. That looks more positive. It's taken a while, or it's crashed. Okay, looks like it's, oh no, it's just taken a while. So again, hitting start and select would usually bring up the menu, but of course if you remember what we did with Retroarch, we've already mapped these. So I'm guessing that start and select in here will work. Of course it does, that's great news. So right away, we can put some cheats in if we wanted to, but I'm not going to. I'm going to come out, I'm going to add some credits in here. Again, this is all done with the arcade stick. You saw how quick I did that for the first time. I've done it on previous installations, but this is the first time I've done it on here. So I'm just going to pan down so you can see I'm using the controller. Hit start. Looks like I've hit start on another controller maybe. Oh, it looks like I've got player 1 and player 2 mapped to the same controls, which I guess could be fun. Again, you two could do this. It's just about going into Retroarch and sorting out the options there that you've got. Obviously I've got a slight issue here with player 1 and player 2 using the same controls, but you could always undo that or put a different player 2 in there. So in theory, if I start and select, there we go. In theory, what we could do here, because of the USB on the go adapter, I've got another 2 USB sockets free down here. Or is it another one? I've got another 1 USB socket free, so I could actually use that. Is it 1 or 2? Okay, just another one by the look of it, because I've got my USB drive in. I've got this pad, so yeah, I've got another one free. I could plug a USB hub in there as well, just to extend it out a bit more. But there it is. USB controllers working on the Super Nintendo Classic via Retroarch 171 on various systems. Alright guys, take care, don't forget to like, subscribe. I'll catch you on the flip side.